Alrighty, hello folks. It's been a little bit longer than I intended it to be. Hope you all are having a... Oh, am I audible? Okay, looks like I am audible. Great, hope you all are having a good time. It's been a little bit. I didn't mean to take another month off of streaming, and I think I'm actually going to start moving to Tuesday night streams, as I put at the top of the video. I think it just makes more sense for my schedule, though I do enjoy being able to go, hey, it's Friday, I can do whatever I want. Hey, that's no one. Happy Friday to you as well. I just keep having plans, and I'm going to have even more plans in the near future, just lots of weekend travel, and that makes doing Friday night streams a little bit more challenging. So I'm going to look at switching that up. I think Tuesday night Eastern time is a currently unoccupied stream slot, so that's probably what I'm going to go into. But I don't know, I've heard reports of JNet lag being kind of bad. I also feel like I'm playing kind of badly. I went to NANPC Philly, which was a great time. Seba and Sanjay did a fantastic job organizing, and my decks shat the bed. I played a variant on 710 bad right now, maybe worse. Oh yeah. I'm not quite sure what you're saying, Lazy, but that's all. Oh, maybe about how you're doing. That sucks. I'm sorry. I hope things turn around. But yeah, I went to this event, and my Ari deck just kind of fumbled. Oh, okay. JNet lag is 7 out of 10 bad. That's not great. My Ari deck, which did very well at NANPC Boston, went undefeated, just sort of kept tripping over itself with awkward draws, which, is a thing. And then I played a variation of Tuno's Op List, that I think is a pretty strong deck. It's such a strong deck, in fact, that the team, let's go and see if we can find it here. It's one of these tabs. My goodness. Okay. So, this Inversificator kit that Ben brought, and this is also an Inversificator kit that Aunt Radish brought, and then I also played, I think there was one more person that I played who was playing Inversificator kit. And it's just okay, well, I got paired into... I'm pretty sure... No, I think it was 2 Inversificators kits and 1 Labasome kit. And I just wasn't really in the game for all of those matches. I think there was some play mistakes on my part. But also, I just wasn't... It wasn't a matchup I had practiced, and so... that makes the play mistakes worse and makes them much kind of more exacerbated. Yeah, this tournament was over a quarter kit. There was one World Tree Ari didn't make the cut, I think. I don't think... Actually, no, Sebastian K was probably on World Tree Ari. I think was playing his combo kill Ob. And oh yeah, I had some weird losses in Swiss to see how they run Ag Infusion that I thought was actually punitive Ag Infusion, and the lines against those two decks are not dissimilar, but they're just different enough that I screwed it up. We've got... Oh no, this was an interesting event. But basically, I showed up having not practiced, and then proceeded to get smashed like someone who didn't practice and was out of touch with the meta. And that felt pretty bad. So I'm kind of trying to decide, okay, do I not play Nationals, which is next weekend, or do I try and practice some? And I think probably I should try and practice some. I have some things I would change. My arissana list, I'm okay, honestly, it felt like I was drawing Cubon and Urban Art. It's oh, I just need to cut some cute pieces for draw pieces, and the list still has some high ceilings. This is arissana with... Let's see if I have the list in my decks. Yeah, it's this list. I didn't have I cut the missed bones for a cleaver and cut a gachapon for a clot. Um, and I was on 3 coalescences, but it's just like lots. It's a deck where it's like a lot of little small tweaks can change the feel of it a lot. It's still an engine I really like. I think it has some powerful stuff. I think I might want to lean more into some of the engine bits. I think I went like a little bit too reg for me to feel like the deck was doing anything unfair. So that's a thing to do. Yeah, Kronos, unfortunately, I can't make it to Cascadia this year. I would have loved to. It just wasn't quite in the cards for me with my other commitments for this year, which is a real bummer. Like, it's going to be a great event. It sounds like the turnout's looking really good. So if you can make it, I would actually encourage you to go. I think it's going to be a quite large event. But yeah, unfortunately, I can't make it. I actually wanted to kind of, to some extent, this is going to be a little bit of a lazy react stream, but I think Kikai's blog, which is known as Trace X on Substack, the blog is titled The Surveyor. This set of articles rocks. I don't always agree with everything, but I think Kikai, especially this article, actually, this analysis is fantastic. And maybe we can talk about some of the events, because we've had a lot of events since I've last really done a stream. We've had APAC, we've had EMEA, and we've had the Intercontinental Championship. And I meant to pull up the America's Continental Championship as well, which is probably at the top here somewhere. Oh, and we should probably also talk about the organized play changes. I had a small hand in those. Small. I had a hand in those. Let's not do the minimizing thing, but so we'll maybe get through those stuff. This is gonna be a little bit more of a React kind of discussion stream. I actually think if I play Nationals, East Coast Nationals next weekend, I'm probably looking at playing some kind of ASA deck. I think the Obelisk, and we'll talk about it here why I don't love it, but yeah, I mean, this is genuinely, I think, some of the best content in Netrunner, because writing informative stuff concisely is extremely difficult. I would love to get back into like proper video production stuff. Though if you haven't, also you should check out Andre and I's 2.5-hour rerun through our tier list. I thought that was a good time, and hopefully something kind of interesting for people. But Kikai's blogs have been great for summarizing things concisely, and obviously when you go concise, you sometimes lose some accuracy or nuance, but this is like honestly amazing stuff, and huge shout outs to Kikai. I love it. It's interesting. I don't know that I completely agree with this, but I also don't think I have any evidence that the most important thing is that you should play, like, that this is actually bad advice. I think there are decks that are clearly stronger than the others. But I do think Kikai's general point of like the difference between the tier 1 decks and the tier 2 decks is less big. I think there's a little bit of this weird situation we're in right now where the best runner deck is, it's not quite the tier 0 deck. It fails to meet a lot of the criteria, but to me, this World Tree Arissana, and I don't know which one. Yeah, this one by Jai is a good enough one to talk about, right? To me, I think if Netrunner was a game with like professional, like real money stakes, this is the deck I think all of the tournament grinders would be on. Because I think this deck is just fundamentally unfair in some pretty profound ways for a runner deck. And in general, in any card game, and in Netrunners particularly, you want to be playing the unfair deck, because this deck has the ability to answer everything, and then it's just about picking your meta call, and then making sure you play the lines right. And I had some fun experiences. I someone one of I'm going to say one of the Dans, but brought World Tree Arsenal to our casual meetup, and it was a good time. It was interesting seeing and talking with him about the lines that he had, and like I was seeing lines he didn't know he had. Um, it's actually part of the reason why I'm not as high on the Facet Ob style lists. Is I think good Arissana players, or especially World Tree Arissana players, will just run you down. It was an interesting game where I actually like SDS'd, or no, I Stavka'd both the World Tree and a Breaker, and then lost. Like I shut down the engine like 2 turns after it got up going, and it was the deck is still strong enough even without the World Tree to kind of just plow through things. Though obviously the World Tree, like there were some awkward draws and things I could have done differently, right? I think that's one of the appealing things about playing Op right now. Is like, oh, you always feel like you had a line, but I do kind of think this style of deck is actually able to really effectively and quickly close out Corps from having lines. And I think that's why we saw the EMEA Continentals do so well with these Dial M for Murder decks, which, to me is basically designed in response to these World Tree decks. I don't think this deck is super real, but I also have said that about many decks that continue to go on and do quite well, like the Isawak decks played by Wenjong. Uh, like he continues to impress with that. Um, that's the moon saying for what I think Facet Ob has the same thing going on as World Tree Ari. Play it close to optimally is really hard, tons of deep lines. But I agree that World Tree Ari is favored. Yeah, that's the moon. This is the hard thing about talking about the Facet Ob, because I've been playing it. I generally think of myself as a pretty good Ob player, and I'm able to, it's a deck where I'm like, okay, if I am a better player than my opponent, most of the time I can just kind of force a win through playing my cards right. But I think part of it is I am not better than most people. When you look at the cut, there was a period I think where I had a claim to being a top 20 player in the world in Netrunner for a bit. Last year I came, second at EMEA Continentals. No, I came second at Cascadia the year before at EMEA. And, I was a very good player then. I think what's happening is I am no longer that good of a player, so I'm not seeing some of those lines, and it's hard for me to take an analysis of my in-person games and see where I missed the lines. Probably I need to do some better note-taking. The other thing is I feel like it's just a bit flimsier than it appears. And there's a little bit more tech out there than I think people expect there to be. Now, I probably need to play it. I don't want to give up on the deck. I think the deck is quite interesting. I'm glad that people are able to get results with it. I think it turns out to be a deck that doesn't... It's a deck I'm going to keep playing because I think it's a very, very cool deck. It's not one I think I plan to take to a tournament because basically one of the things I realized, the thing that happened to me was that someone showed up with Inversificator, and I basically went, oh no, my entire deck falls apart. If you're playing Kit and Inversificator, it is pretty much impossible for my Archer to actually have a meaningful impact on the game. And a lot of the deck is about making a server that is in some way reliant on Archer to be annoying. And if you're having to build a 3-ice remote, you're probably losing in some other way. And it's not even that good against Inversificator. And so it just felt like I was kind of getting... I was just... Basically, I went to Philly and felt like I just got out meta decked. And that's rough, and that's a little dispiriting. And then I've been playing it, and it's kind of like, okay, I can beat some good players, or I can beat some, I can beat some decent players. I don't know how consistently I'll beat very, very good players, unless they're playing decks that are a little bit behind the meta. So that's No Moon. The reason I disagree, and maybe this won't be a real meta threat, but NANPC Philly has some very good players, and they put a bunch of Inversificator kit into the cut. Yeah, we're talking about 2-no Ob. I actually want to look at some of the Ob variations, and we'll probably do that in a later discussion. Yeah, this Ice Sweet does look marginally better. I don't know if it's better. Yeah. I think, like, and maybe it's fair to say that Inversificator kit was, like, the hot tech for this meta, but this matchup, and, like, you could see stuff, but, like, genuinely, I think people should look at this deck. This is not, like, an all-in Spark deck. This is a Shapers just have broken cards, and Kit Inversificator just turns off a lot of ice. Yeah, I don't know the Chrysium grid, and yeah, I do know about the Chrysium grid and the Hearts and Minds for Trank grid. I'm not convinced that's going to make the difference. Like, those are improvements to the deck. Both things are improvements to the deck. I'm not sure they make differences. Yeah, I don't know. Like, this list, I think, is genuinely, if we see Corp, like, especially against, like, the Asmaris, even though this list's only loss, I think, was to the Jupiter Asmari, this list, I think, is actually really strong. I think it's, like, a little bit of a thing people should be considered. Yeah, like, the problem I was finding, so, like, I played, we'll go and find Tuno's list. I played, like, a practice game with, doesn't look like Tuno claimed their list, so we'll have to go to EMEA where they did. Oh, apparently they didn't claim their list here either. That's kind of frustrating, so we're going to go to the Null Signal Games website. I'm sorry. If I said they, I meant its lists. Just the recap have it. Yeah, I love this list. It is such a cool list. It built a very, like, solid and interesting list. Hey, Big Bonkle. So what it turns out is, yeah, when Ari puts a Physarum on Archer, you actually don't have counterplay to that. Like, you do, yes, a virus exists in the deck, but so does Simulchip exist in theirs. And so, like, whenever they have more Simulchips and more Simulchip access than you do virus access, was just, like, how a bunch of my games have come out. And maybe I'm tunneling too much on Archer, and you're supposed to go, like, okay, I'm going to get a border control and tax you out. I think there's more play in this style of list than I'm able to manifest right now. Because, like I said, I'm pretty washed at the moment. But, back to the meta. To me, if you want to grind and try hard, you play a list like this. You know, I think it's a lot of meta calls and a lot of practice to make this good. But it is clearly the best deck in format, to me. Like, I don't think if you're, like, and I'm not saying you can't win with other stuff, but I think you're sacrificing some amount of expected value by playing a different runner deck. And at a certain point, the meta starts shifting such that, like, yeah, you can get some equilibrium points by you know, using a different runner who has different strengths than this. Like, you know, can we go all in knife if everyone's going to go super asset heavy because this deck is basically a pile of ice tech? Maybe, right? But, like, this to me is this deck is defining the format to the point where I wouldn't be shocked to see it get banned out in some way. So, Meteor, this is not the specific list. This is the everyone brings their slightly own thing. Oh yeah, and there was a story I was gonna say, if like the first I played like one practice game of Facet Ob before this, and it was Dan playing the Banhar version of this deck, and just laughing at me whenever I tried to make any progress on the board, because Banhar Viserum is just it's so difficult to beat. And then, like, I was even like, oh, I'll slot Zato Grid so it does something. Zato Grid, in fact, does nothing. Because if they install an Airblade, they can use Airblades to turn off Zato Grid, which is such a wild interaction. It's like the ice gains this when encounters ability, and so they can use Airblades to prevent the when encounters ability. So it just does absolutely. And then also, if they run out of that, like Viserum also gets them to the same place. Like it's just this super curse. Like, oh, maybe I can use Zato to make my ice matter. Nope, I can't. It just kind of wrecks it. Okay, so World Tree Arissana to me is what you should be playing. If you're like me and you want to play your fun decks because you don't think you're actually very good, I think the Reg Ari is totally real. I think it can be a 50% deck. Now, I think it can actually hit close to this 50%, 56% win rate. Now, obviously, my Philly performance doesn't match that. But World Tree being around the 60 to 70% win rate is clearly a problem. So much of a problem I would not be shocked if it got touched before Worlds. Yeah, that's no one. Exactly. The part of the issue with World Trade is it has also crazy asset trashing value because, yeah, it finds one resource and then it's found bones. And then probably it can play 2 bones and just turn 1 bones into the next bones. And it's just kind of silly. And like Purple Rush decks, like World Tree Arissana had a positive win rate against PD, I believe. I think we're going to see that. Forget if that's here. Okay, it's going to be in one of the other Surveyor recaps. Hold on. What should I play? Arissana, almost undefeated. Let's see. What do you touch the Viserum? No, I think you just nuke the tree. I genuinely think you just have to nuke the tree. I think the tree is World Tree is fairly unhelpful, or unhealthy for the meta. And yeah, I don't think in particular it's like an archetype that needs to be saved. Let's see. Yeah, World Trade at 65% win rate. One of 5 lists that made the cut. And like if SBL SBT decides to ban a different card, while I disagree, I understand that like this is a new archetype and maybe you can ban some of the other supporting pieces. I don't think that's great because I actually think if you ban the other support pieces, you cut out all of the other decks, but you probably leave World Tree in existence. But that's been the thing that SBT has done in the past. It would not be unreasonable for me to... I would not be shocked if they decided to not ban... If they just decided to ban some of the support pieces, so something like Coalescence or Muse or SMC. Like, I could see any of those also being on the chopping block. And like I could see a world where they say, you know what, World Tree allows for very skill expressive decks, and the thing we need to do is just bring down their ceiling. And I could, while I don't think that's what I want to see, I think like banning a Muse and a Coalescence and an SMC, like just kneecap the rest of the faction so that this one deck that is too strong has a second chance to live. It wouldn't shock me, but I would prefer to see a World Tree ban. So the question is, does Coalescence have a home without tree? Absolutely. Yeah, I've been playing Coalescence just as like the the like having a program that gains you credits in Shaper is a huge deal. Um, it just completely changes the way that you can structure your decks. Um, like the thing with Coalescence is it has triggers with things like Lilypad, Aesops, Simulchip, spec work, environmental testing, um, like even stuff like it turns DZMZ into a more real economy card. Like there's lots of ways. It actually lets you do like stuff like, oh, I've got all my breaker. I like want to spend this trick shot. I get to turn trick shot credits into real credits by SMCing my trick shot dollars into a coalescence and then popping those. So I get to turn 4 trick shot dollars into 4 real dollars. Um, and I think like that is cool. Now, does Coalescence like see main deck play in every Shaper deck? Absolutely not. I think it has a place in engine decks in some way. Um, I've played a ton of Coalescence already without the tree, and I feel like I click for 2 way too often. That's interesting, Jason. I've been playing. I was playing Coalescence in just like a reg Ari with no spec works and no Aesops. Like this is just a brick I'm gonna put down, and like the idea was that Urban Art Vernissage means I'm actually clicking for 4, which is a sure gamble, and then sometimes I'm also using Lilypad to make it a clicker 4 and draw a card. And it felt fine. I used it probably like a couple times as a click for 2, but it wasn't frequently a quick click for 2, so it felt pretty nice for me. But I suspect when I was looking, if I look at my list with a critical eye, I actually had too much cash and not enough draw. And so the question starts being, where do I cut, right? I was running 3 sure gambles, 3 dirty laundries, 3 environmental testings, 3 coalescences, and 3 spec works. And that ended up being with only 3 diesels and 3 lily pads as my draw. So like clearly deck building mistakes, right? I need some actual draw in the deck that isn't just lily pad and diesel. And yeah, Rohit calling out Simulchip is also a synergy with Coalescence. It's actually, I think, a pretty important one. Chronos Protocol is saying, I think Viserium is way over the curve, probably not enough to deserve a ban. Bologna did get the chop over a more targeted R plus ban, so I don't know what to expect. Yeah, Chronos, I do think that Viserium is probably not a card we're going to get to play with forever. Like, I think Viserium has a limited shelf life. I think Viserium is not what I would identify as the problem card in the meta. But, you know, I could see... I get why people have other perspectives on it. I think to some extent, like, yeah, probably you have to play some of Iris. And yeah, Jason, it might... if you're not feeling like it's lining up a support, it's probably not worth the slot, right? Like, I think in Arissana, like, probably just a Dirty Laundry is going to do more for you than the Coalescence. Like, yeah, I don't know. I had a terrible performance with this style of deck. So, you know, that was not the pain point to me. I did not draw a Coalescence and go, oh shoot, I'm clicking for 2 here. I would be, at worst, I was like, oh, I'm clicking for 2 and drawing a card. That's actually fine. That's a build script. But I don't think I basically never did that. I feel like it was maybe I would do it on turn 1, but that would be like environmental testing, Coalescence, install gotcha, and like trick shot, and like, so I had some terms like that, but like, and so there were some really powerful turns, but my deck just didn't quite get there. One of the things I'm trying to look at is like, should I just be on more deep dives and not on conduit? Like, people are no longer leaving like a ping on R&D for me to conduit through, and so it's just not doing the work. I'm also like going to be cutting Cubons and Urban Arts, and once I start cutting Urban Arts, then looking at cutting Coalescences makes a lot of sense. But anyway, it's been a long tangent. Back to Hikai's article. I disagree. I think you should be playing World Tree. You should definitely practice your matchups if you're not going to, like, regardless of what you're playing, and then tune the deck to what you expect the meta to be. You know, these are 2 and 3 are a common piece of advice. 1 is a big change, right? There for 20 up till about 22, it was like this is clear. There's clearly a best three decks, and you just have to grind those matchups. World Tree Arissana. We've got Swift Lat and Boring Lat. Yeah, Jason, that's fair. Yeah, that it's hard to evaluate. I haven't genuinely. If you've been playing more, you should trust yourself and not me. I have not had that issue, but I have not, like I've been saying, I'm washed. I have not been grinding as much in Netrunner lately, so I just don't feel like I can give that much of a It's not been an issue for me, but. Dick Basis, a serious question. If you ban Ari out or down to average, don't we just go back to Turbine Host to find the entire meta? So this is the thing. I actually think the Reg Ari decks are... I guess here's the thing. World Tree Ari is a 65 to 70% against the field deck. So that deck is definitionally too strong. My hunch is some version of Arissana. Maybe it's Arizon's All-In Deep Dive. Maybe it's a boring Arissana. Maybe it's an engine Arissana. I think one of those three Arissana lists is like a 50% against the field. Maybe not against the field, but if you can predict the Corp meta, you can just be up. And that has always been a Shaper standpoint, as Shaper strength, and I think that... yeah, and Meter saying, I think Turbine has some serious weaknesses to things that Ari beats, stuff like the Archer that Ob fetches. Yeah, so just quoting Meter there. Yeah, I think Arissana does make the Ob matchup, it just kind of dunks on it. And that's, that if you are very, very good at the Ob, there are lines. But if you're very, very good at Ari, you have the agency in that matchup. The Ob players represent threats, and you have to misevaluate those threats for the Ob player to win, at least in my limited experience so far. So I think part of it is also we saw that Hosh on its own wasn't actually if you go back to American Continentals, which is okay. No one's playing World Tree Arissana here. So it's not like World Tree Arissana was displacing Reg Hosh, right? But Reg Hosh did nothing in this event, right? Reg Hosh is 30% of the field and 12% of the cut. And so I think you're seeing a different style. The meta is going to look different even after World Tree gets removed. So Rohit, it's Kit gets a call out here, but it's not I think fairly, the Philly was a smaller event, so it's not being treated as the most serious. But does the more Reg Ari run Turbine Cleaver Buzzsaw, so avoiding the Hosh part isn't just the 5-strength breakers that can 2-for-1 subs the defining thing? Absolutely, Nick. I think it is the defining thing of the format. And banning Turbine is definitely a consideration. I'm all for... to me, I would be... I think part of the question to me is how unstable does this SBT want to make the world's meta, right? If World Tree and Turbine get banned, I don't know how that those two cards have been running the whole meta. Oh, thanks, Eric. Those two cards have been basically defining the meta for the last several months. And so, if you ban those two, it just completely changes. Jeremy, so you're asking, are cuts still on top? Are Corp still on top in the cut? To me, the answer is I don't think they are. And I'm going to say something where even if the data disagrees with me, I don't think they are. Um, and that is, you know, a bad look for someone who is somewhat professionally a data scientist, and has made part of my name in the network community for being a data based person, right? Um, uh, and and yeah, it's the I see plays in the cut where the runner just isn't playing around a corp win condition, and I kind of go, I don't understand what's happening here. Um, and runner is genuinely quite difficult to play right now. But when you play it well, I think it is above 50% win rate. And you see that when the whole field is a 50% win rate, runner corp, that usually means that runners are overperforming in the cut. Um, so, um, so yeah. So going back to this, like Shaper is really good. Andre and I talked about like it's funny. Someone in the chat a little bit earlier. It's been a lot of you chatting, so that's been a lot of fun. Thank you all for hanging out. Anything that can play trick shot is good. I had someone I think play trick shot in Crim against me, and I was like, this isn't good, but it is kind of funny. And I could, Andre and I talked about how this is clearly the best set ever for Shaper. Um, and I still kind of think that creation and control was probably a bigger deal for Shaper, but that's a whole tangent on its own. Um, but Trickshot is obscene in terms of its value. I love it. I like. To me, I'm like Shaper was nowhere, so giving it some scene cards. But yeah, it's like Burner is good, but I think actually somewhat on curve. Trickshot's a niche. It's very cool that Arizon found it a good home for it. Trickshot, very, very, very strong. I don't know if this is a banned card or if this is just going to be kind of like Bravado, where it like defines the power ceiling of what they can print. And then we've got Cataloger, which is a great card. Coalescence is just a very interesting card. And like it's funny, it's like if you ban Trickshot and you ban World Tree and you ban Turbine, I think Coalescence ends up still being an interesting piece for Shaper and probably keeps them like close to somewhere in between the Anarch and Crim power level, along with stuff like Lobosome and Muse. But yeah, Trickshot is stronger than I thought it was, which has been, as a person who likes to play Shaper, cool. As a sign for the healthy meta, maybe not great. Personally, I'm also kind of tired of Spark decks, but Kit's doing very well, and it's Kit will rotate in sometime next year, so we can give them their time to shine. Anarch. I think Hoshiko is just under optimized right now. I actually think that Jonas TBU3K had a really good Hosh deck and just hit some weird matchups at Philly and missed the cut slightly, along with just like we played very similar corps and they were just bad meta calls into an all kit field. But I think there's stuff out there for Hosh. It's just not, let's just pile all of the 45 best cards. Like, the way you've built a Hosh deck for a long time is you take what are the most powerful 45 cards, slap them in a deck list. And I think you have to be a little bit more intelligent now and actually have to find synergies and an engine that makes sense. I think that's cool. That's actually a great thing to have come out of this meta. And like does redeem Hoshiko a little bit to me, that like you can't just value pile with every Anarch. And Essa has been very, very good. I actually haven't looked at Tuno's list for this. This is Intercontinentals. Yeah, so we've got Chistushka, Labor. Like, I'm trying to figure out. So the big thing is this is a 45 card list. I'm trying to think what the okay. A single spark is kind of interesting because you've got lamp. You don't actually care that much what you hit. You have one of the breakers. You have a retrieval run. This is a very, I mean, genuinely Tuno has done I think some of the most impressive deck building this entire season. It's done a great job, um, and like I should play this list. It looks quite solid, and yeah, I'm excited to give that some shots. So yeah, Hoshiko and Essa I think are the only two Anarch IDs you should look at right now. You can try. I've had someone play sort of a virusy Lu, which is interesting, but I don't. It's like it just doesn't have the same gas, right? Knobkery was plus MU, extra pressure, and reset after the purge. And there's no single card that's going to do that. And so you start having to play multiple cards. And no, Tuno got it all the way down to 45 for intercontinentals. And some of that might be that the two cards they cut are tech cards that you would play in a broader field. This is always one of the weird things to me about intercontinentals is you don't actually have to play against the whole meta. You have to play against the expected of the top 16. And so, like, you know, Man in the Moon and Santa's, like, Rosetta Ayla decks, I think are not things you want to take into a field. But if you're expecting a field that's full of, like, Asa and, like, it felt like a meta call to a very specific set of corps. And I'm not sure that it's, like, it's the hotness that I would recommend to people. Criminal is struggling. I think, though, if people want to try something cool, I actually think that this deck is quite good. It can be fragile to specific things, but Not Again has been grinding this deck for like months. It is totally solid. You know, Eric showed that you can just flex with Zaya, and Banhar Steve has been a continuingly strong deck. Like, it might just be a couple player special, but it's done well at a couple events that showed up. Now, you know, the players that play it I think are very good players. Kikai and Bridgman I think are both quite strong. Hey Augustus, no, I'm just shooting the breeze, talking about how badly I did at Philly, and how I'm washed, and then giving people advice about what they should play for Netrunner anyway. And you missed a long section where we said that World Tree should get banned, and then what we'll do when they don't ban it. And now we're just going through Kikai's articles, and we're going through some other stuff. So yeah. I guess actually now that there's more of you here, my plan is to start going to Tuesday streams for Netrunner, because I keep being busy on Friday evenings, having travel plans, and so I think Tuesday evenings are going to be better for me. So starting on this upcoming Tuesday, you know, around 7 p.m. Eastern, but, you know, will depend a little bit on dinner plans and stuff. HB, okay. High win rate, holds up pretty well to Ari with 60%. Small sample sizes, I think, on a lot of this stuff, but Skunk Void and Hollow Man, I mean, like, I love Asa. I think maybe it's time for me to put down the Obelisk for a little bit and go to my second love that's going to be rotating soon. Actually, it's not my second love, it's my first love, Asa, and just start grinding it again. Probably Argus is my true first competitive era Netrunner love, but Asa is where I started actually putting up results. Augustus, I don't think it's a... I don't want to downplay TAI, but you guys aren't the only ones playing it. Like, I don't know, like, it wasn't as well refined in Americas, or maybe people were sitting on it. I think in in-person play, there's some reticence for it, but it's putting up results, I feel like, outside of just TIA. But you guys are undeniably like leading the pack on it. So, um, Trapkin question about World Tree. Ari, if you get an Amani trigger against it, what's the best target between Lily Pad and World Tree? Um, I mean, the frustrating answer here is going to depend on their board state. Do they have 6M, do they have 6MU of stuff and only a lily pad down? Then you should trash the lily pad, or bounce the lily pad. If their board is like Coalescence World Tree lily pad, I'm probably looking at the World Tree because it ends up just being the more essential piece for them restarting their engine. But Augustus's answer is, as the person who's played who's actually played World Tree Ari really, I think that matters. Yeah, I mean that is it's very situational. You played it and hit the lily and got the feedback. It wasn't good because they just trashed the programs they didn't need anyway after losing the MU. Yeah, I mean you should only hit like that. Oh, it's in the cost of 2MU probably only matters when if they have breakers and conduit and if their MU is being used productively, good. If what you're doing is saying, oh, I'm gonna bounce the lily pad to also then make you trash like a Coalescence and a Parisha in a PD matchup, I don't know if that's helping. Well, it's not PD, it's probably Sports Metal. So I don't know. But maybe Parisha's the bad example there. But I don't know. It's I have to see the replay. And yeah, the other thing is I was saying how I played a game at my casual meetup and the deck I was playing against someone, they basically got 3 World Tree triggers off before I trashed it, and it was actually enough for them to set up and just win the game. Nick Mason stepped away for a moment. Is there a best mid commitment level of runner deck? I mean Not Against Knife deck I think is quite good. If you want to play actual Netrunner, I think the kit decks are a good middle ground between you have to play smart, but you also get to do some absolutely busted stuff. Like those lists require piloting skill. You'll learn things about Netrunner that will withstand a ban list hit, even if the deck might get some bans. Lobby and I think actually if you want to play, I do genuinely think that this Inversificator kit is a stronger deck than the Lobasoam kits. It's fiddlier, but I think it's a better. I think the list is a better matchup into what the meta is trying to do right now. So. The Zaya list, I would say, if what you want to do is learn how to play Netrunner, and I mean, not how to play this meta, but, if the goal you have is, I want to become a god-tier Crim player, Zaya is what you should play. Eric will, maybe we can get Whiteblade to call in and give you a lesson on a live stream or something. But I think it is a very difficult list to pilot at the level you need to see consistent success. I think this 2 out of 5 is it's a weird thing where I don't think Eric has to work very hard to do very well on this list. But I think to get to we also have to remember that Whiteblade Eric has been playing since 2013, I think, and has been a top level player for most of those years. I can name a couple of people I would have confidence could put up a similar result, but it's a handful. It's not most people in the top cuts of current events because we have learned a different skill set, and it's been a skill set that's very good for winning games. But Xayah has a very particular, like, you have to understand when you're the beatdown. You have to understand when you need to take your foot off their throat, so that you can, like, get a run up for a bigger kick. And that is I think it's like one of the best and most interesting elements of Netrunner. Like, I think the Xayah list, people always be like, oh man, like there's an idea of like, oh, people just want Netrunner to be X matchup versus X matchup. And I think, like, to me, the core ideal of Netrunner is something like this Xayah list against like a PD list, just battling it out for eternity. And I'm like, one of the things that's like, oh, I probably, it'd be a fun skill and fun exercise for me to just learn the reps on Xayah. I think this 2 out of 5 is a little soft. I think when you have a lot of mastery, the deck is not the most complex, but you have to actually have a good mastery of Corps to play the Xayah, I think, very well. But yeah, I would recommend play the kit, play like 10 practice games of kit, and you'll be in a good spot for nationals. Okay, I'm going to be playing. I need to like start practicing Skunk Void as well as Hollow Man Asa. I think they're both really interesting decks. I love me some Asa. I think they have some weaknesses, but I genuinely I feel like every Corp deck you pick right now, you're conceding a certain percentage of the field. Like, you just don't have game against certain decks, which is why I feel like this is a runner meta, not a Corp meta. PD is, Kikai says it exactly. PD is as solid as ever. I still have a lot of faith in the Skunk Void stuff, but Midnight 3 big deal is a thing you can do. And World Tree Ari has been the like notable thing that actually is slowing down PT, and like, that's kind of interesting. Sports Metal I would not really recommend. Jinteki has kind of collapsed to punitive decks. Glacier Ag Infusion, both Augustus and Sock put up good results. I'm kind of curious about, did Augustus play it at Intercontinentals? Augustus is in the chat, but we can go and see. He did. But okay, so Glacier is a thing, and I think something to mention though. Actually, this is okay. I was about to say a thing that Ag Infusion can do right now is play Brands, and it can play Boitatas. But yeah, so I guess saying I played exclusively because I expected no Hosh. It's hard to justify in typical Swiss fields because this deck has Turbine, Cleaver, Buzzsaw problems, but World Tree, like, this deck probably sets up better against World Tree than a lot of other decks because it can just it can ice all 4 servers and kind of feel good. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Bodo and Brand is like if you want to dunk on Physarum, Bodo and Brand are like, no one can break those well right now. Sorry, it's Bodo, yeah. Yeah, if people are playing Turbine and Carver, you're really sad though if that's your whole win condition. So yeah, Glacier Ag Infusion putting up some good results. Punitive Ag Infusion pretty solid. Facet Ob, it is a very, very hard deck to play. I'm not even sure if its win rate is good enough to justify it, but I think if you like, that said, I think if you want to play Facet Ob, and like I am someone who does want to, it is a good enough deck to get you wins. Like, it is good enough to win tournaments, even if I don't think it's a particularly optimal list. Will anyone ever be able to like Brand Propeller be? Augustus hitting in with the right answer. Propeller. Propeller is the correct answer to how do we break Bran. And Essa actually is also a good shout. It's what, 4 core damage to break Bran for a credit on a 5 cost Fractor. It's okay. NBN, the Kill Asmari, you know, this is one of those things where it's like, this Kill Asmari did very, very well. And it might be that no one played it at Intercontinentals. There's two different reasons people may not have played it. One, because they expected that the meta was going to be very bad for it. World Tree Arissana probably does have some decent matchups into it, especially now that people had some time to practice. The second option is, at Intercontinentals, you want to feel like you had put the matchup in your hands. And this deck is a coin flip. And it's one of those interesting cases where this deck might be 55% or 60% against the field, but no one wants to take it because you would rather take something like Facet Ob that's 50% against the field, but feels like it gives you outs in games where you don't win immediately. And this Kill Asmari deck kind of goes on the I need to win immediately. Meether, I find it hard to believe Bologna Bandits was so bad it killed NBN as a faction as a whole. Oh, I am not shocked by that at all. So, the reason I'm not shocked is when you look at, yeah, I guess it's calling out ICC was pretty hostile to Asmari with Lat and Essa being popular. Yeah, it honestly might just be that, like, yeah, people were playing more Essa, and people expected more Essa, and you don't want to be playing the Kill Asmari into Essa. It just has some issues. I just don't. So the reason I say that Bologna ban does not surprise me is if we go and look at NBN decks that were good before the Bologna ban. Let's go and see where those would be. This is probably not going to... So, like, this is an example of a... Oh, no, this is a Bologna deck. Okay. Yep. Where are we? We got to go down to, like, some Reality Plus. We've got some of these decks, and we've got Table Carnage, I think. Is this also Table Carnage? No, this is... Okay. So this is Augustus playing, like, this idea of the, like, okay, we're going to use Warm Reception, Working Prototype, and stuff, and we're going to play this at APAC and win. I think, and Augustus is here and can correct me, but my assumption is that this is a list you bring because people are not expecting it. But now that the meta has everyone packing 2x bones, and now understands which of these cards they need to trash, which of them they don't, and the fact that runners don't actually need to have money to win the game here, they don't need to have real liquid cash, it makes your Ice Suite just look way worse. And so, like, my theory as to why we don't see NBN is the whole fork that NBN was presenting was, you need to stop me from doing my stuff. But when you do that, I'm going to oppo you and then deny you all of your money and win. And, like, the asset trashing tempo meant that you didn't have enough money to steal Bologna if you were trying to keep their board down. And then when you got oppo, you were also getting market forces. I don't know if that feels wrong, right? And you also just couldn't make actually, no, this is not the correct thing. The real, like, probably the core thing is that Bologna basically meant that on central accesses, the expected value for the runner was so much lower than it was anywhere, like, compared to every other corp. There was 9 points out of the deck that you needed to have a ton of money to steal. And when you stole, you opened yourself up to the immediate punishment. Now, the cost for stealing any of these agendas is near zero hit in tempo for the runner, and so centrals are much softer. And so these strategies that were like, okay, yeah, we both know there's a Bologna in my hand, but we also both know that if you see it, you cannot steal it. It will cost you the game to steal the Bologna. And so without that threat, it's not shocking to me that NBN is effectively dead. Um, like this is a deck that didn't have it, but also I think kind of disappeared. Uh, you know, see, Chris seems to disagree. I still am pretty confident that we're not like, you know, if nothing changes about the meta, and I think I would be pretty surprised if nothing changed about the meta, then we're not going to see any NBN. In or we're not going to see. That's not. It's all people will bring things that they want, right? Um, yeah, Augusta's saying NBN was a bit of a meta call at APAC, both less bones and people disrespecting the power of Prototype. You felt like Prototype was the power card in that set, in that list. When I look at your card, I think of Warm Reception as the power card in your list. Because it's the extra click to me seems more important than the potential prison of working Prototype. But that's just how that's how I've always evaluated those two cards. Not even the re-education is just bad there. Um, I think the re-education combo is a meta call deck, and I think especially if we start seeing more Essa, as we start seeing more Kit, I actually think both of those, like, if the meta has, like, in a hypothetical world where World Tree gets banned, yeah, if people are installing Cast as their econ, like, yeah, Prototype is going to be sick. I just don't know how many decks are doing that right now. Uh, and yeah, the Asmari combo list, calling it an NBN deck is a bit like calling the punitive decks Jinteki decks. They're not really a Jinteki deck or an NBN deck. They are a specific combo of cards that happens to be in a faction, but it's like that combo deck, not that faction deck, I guess. Um, so, yeah. Um, but the point also with the Kilsmari, I think it has some really bad matchups. It was a good call for EMEA. But I think, like, if we see a world where World Tree is banned, I actually think runners are going to have more tech for busting early remotes because they have to keep up somehow. And they'll be a little bit less, like, the downfall of the Hoshiko decks, I think, has been in part because their game plan has been, oh, I can get Buzzsaw, Cleaver, and Echelon up in time, and I think that turned out to be a not very good strategy, and I suspect that when people sit down to optimize Hoshiko because they don't want to learn Shaper, we will see that Hoshiko, like, Anarchlists will start playing Botulises and Boomerangs again, and will become a meta force once again. Like, there's a big part of me that suspects that if you just went to, oh wow, it didn't show up. Okay, we're just gonna do this. Like, if you just went and played Sokka's list, and D, I think, is actually giving some evidence for this. You can play this list with a couple small tweaks, and you'll be basically top of the meta again. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing. Augustus saying current factions are NBN, Wayland, and Punitive, which I would say. I feel like the current factions right now on Corp side are Asa, Op, and Punitive, and Re-Education. Yeah, Boomerang is Core and Hosh. Yeah, I think basically people cut it because they're like, oh, I can have this super powerful board state. I can just rely on Turbine to solve all my problems. And I think in practice, like, Leech is going to do a lot of those same things with fewer asks, and Boomerang is going to solve the hard part of the game for you. And that this style of list, I think, is just kind of cracked. Okay, so yeah, now I've pontificated for an hour on Netrunner stuff. We went through Kikai's fantastic piece. Again, people are not reading Kikai's stuff. Genuinely, I signed up for email notifications, and these are like I'm going to pause what I'm doing at work to go and read these. I think these are great. TI Breakers, putting out a thing. Y'all have killed it this season, so great work. Um, but yeah. Um, oh yeah, yeah. There was other things to talk about. Okay, let's quickly look. I'm gonna pick some of these lists and play them at some point. Um Hey Dan, yeah. So my recommendation, like genuinely, Kick Guy's article, "What should I play?" is the things you should pick. Um, but if you want to try hard, World Tree Ari. If you don't want to try hard, Kit or Lat, very very good. If you want to play Hoshiko, I think you can. You just need to play Boomerangs. If you want to play Essa, Tuno's list looks great, and I think there are some other, you know, test running also did a very good Essa list. Um, and then for Corpse, find one that you enjoy playing. Be it Asa, be it PD, be it Facet Ob, be it Combo Ob, be it Punitive Jinteki, be it Glacier Ag Infusion, or what am I missing? Re-Education Combo NBN. I feel like those are kind of your choices. Um, but yeah, that would be my sense on this stuff. Um, if you want to play Crim, you can. You're going to be fighting an uphill battle, but you can do it. You just have to like actually. If you're going to play Crim, you need to grind your matchups, and you need to be adaptable to what your opponent is doing. You have some really sick power potentials, but you got to know how to play them because this is a meta. Like it's the Corps can't win fairly because they get outvalued by World Tree, so they've gone entirely orthogonal across the board, with maybe the exception of Glacier Ag Infusion. And so you have to be ready to beat orthogonal Corps as criminal, which has not typically been a strong suit of the faction. Uh, Excuse me, I'm apparently very snotty tonight, so excuse me for 1 second while I go get a tissue. Right. Apparently, my body is not used to me just talking at the camera for a couple hours under some light. Not even a couple hours. It's been an hour. So okay. Um, yeah, I will say not against Dex for affiliate and APC is great. Um, I think it's a very neat list. I hope it's not super good because I don't actually think it's a very fun list to play against, but it's a very interestingly strong deck. And, it crushed me the first time we played. I figured out some patterns for it the second time, but. Um, oh boy, some water. Okay. Um, yeah, maybe I should talk about this. I don't know. Um, I actually like. It's funny because like a lot of the stuff that I actually want to say about this. I think kind of went in the article, but if people have questions, I'll try and answer some of them. Um, so, see, 2025 is going to have a little bit of a different feel to it as a season. Um, so, our goals, as are said here, we want to provide more opportunities for in-person play. We want to provide clear stakes and structure for the season. And we want to ensure that online players also have more high um, stakes events. So this graphic, and let me make sure I get the name right for this graphic. Um, Kelly has been started helping with graphics and like genuinely, like this is killer. I think having graphics to go with our stuff is way better than me gesturing and drawing things. Names are hard. I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to defend different names. There was a secret hope that people would come up with would have solved names for us, and we've batted them around for a bit. There's different things you could say, but yeah, I don't know. So this set of stuff, casual tournament kits, renamed circuit opener kits. A lot of people are saying they felt very casual. I feel like they're generally pretty casual. They're also not part of the competitive circuit anymore, so that name kind of had to change. This does, yeah, Jeremy, this does have a little bit of the fan wiki with trying to show multiverse stuff, but I don't hate that as an aesthetic either. There's I would have designed this graphic differently, but I actually think this graphic does a fantastic job, and I was not as directly involved and didn't ever give any feedback, so I don't want to be critical to this. I actually like this graphic quite a lot. I provided very limited feedback on this because there's just been a lot to do. Game night kits are going to stick around. I think it's going to be an interesting evolution to track how those two get used next season. And then I'm actually the Circuit Breaker Invitational is going to stay basically the same. Actually, no, that's not true. The Circuit Breaker Invitational is probably going to have some changes, but I don't think we've locked them in yet. I think this is the one we're going to get a bit of a feel for. But basically making district championships for areas that have, to me, to some extent, the goal is to kind of have expanding rings of how far you need to travel to go to each of these, but also still encouraging you to, if you have the means to and the will to be able to make multiple of several of these events. That's sort of my personal goal. And so my expectations is there's going to be quite a few district championships. Just a lot in all over the world. These are going to be a kit that we hand out somewhat prolifically. And the other thing that's not actually well pushed here, but there's dates on these things. So district season will be January to April, then Mega City will be May to July, and then Continentals will be August and September, and then Worlds will be in October. So it's going to have a real progression of seasons, and I think that will there are the hard part about this is there's trade-offs to everything, and one thing that is going away in this, and the thing that I'm actually a little surprised I haven't gotten more flack for is UK Nationals, won't exist because Nationals won't exist, and historically that was an event held in November, and that doesn't fit in the season. Now, does that mean they can't host it? Absolutely not. And there's that's a thing where I want to make sure that OP can support people running stuff outside the structure. I just don't know that we're going to have the bandwidth for that in 2025. Wenjong is tier 1 supposed to be higher than tier 4? So this graphic, or this tier numbering, I think is more, it's ripped, if I remember correctly, from Flesh and Blood's tier numbering. It was one of those things that this article went up, and then we all went, oh, we could have caught that, couldn't we? Because, yeah, we are more used to tier 1 being the higher prestige thing, but both work. And it's clear which directions it goes, so I'm not too worried about it. Yeah. For TOs thinking about next year, I would not stress right now about whether you want to apply for a district or a mega city. My encouragement for you would be to apply to both. We as the OP team have some internal criteria that is at different levels of fleshing out, um, that we're going to use to figure out how to assign both districts and megacities. And so the goal will be like that you can apply for districts when you apply for districts, we'll probably have something like a checkbox saying I'm also interested in hosting megacities, and we can start like that will probably be more informational, and then we'll put a megacity championships upload application form in. I don't want to say specifically like, oh, Spokane, you should or you should not apply for a megacity championship, in part because if you'd asked me to put Spokane, Washington on a map, I would not be able to, other than trying to remember where Washington State was. But the goal really for districts and megacities is if it's something that you are interested in a TO as hosting, you should apply and let us and OP figure out the distribution rather than you guys trying to read our minds. We're going to post criteria of things we're looking for so that you can have some idea about what is good to include in your application. And if we don't, you guys can remind me in this chat. Because I think that is a thing that is important for people that want to apply, to have some sense of what they're being evaluated on. Even if we're not going to be like, here's a rubric, top scoring thing gets a megacity championship. Our idea is that we want to make sure that people can run these if they want. So thanks, Brendan. That's a very helpful tip. So yeah, districts, then megacities, continentals. I'm actually really hyped to see continentals be in person worldwide. I have especially APAC has been underserved with large events, and I'm really hoping that we're able to help them throw a big event. And I know that like it will be I think it could be a cool excuse for some people in the other parts of the world that are like, oh, I could travel to wherever it's held this year or this upcoming year. I've always wanted to go, and this is a great excuse for me to kind of doing that. Because I value in-person play a lot. It is not like me personally, I should say, like not as an OP team, and like I'm very glad that but I would like people in the APAC regions to have the opportunities to go to large, high stakes in-person network events, because I think there's just a great experience. And Worlds coming to APAC is a difficult thing for a variety of reasons. Not saying it won't ever happen. It's just kind of difficult to make happen on a kind of cadence. And so this is a great way for us to help like both show that there's some merit to running a Worlds in the APAC region and give them some large events as well. But yeah, I don't know. That's sort of... Oh yeah, and then the other thing that we kind of put is first round buys. We're going to put out some discussion articles, so please, like, in general, like, it's weird where I'm like, buys are a very important thing. They're a very fun thing to talk about, but there's also... I don't know exactly how big of an impact they're going to have in terms of driving tournament attendance, in terms of making tournaments feel weird. I've had people that say like, hey, I'm a little disappointed that buys came back. And I think there's very good reasons to not be wild about buys. I think like it unlevels the playing field, and that is one of the cool parts about network tournaments is you don't like, compared to something like chess, you don't go into an event and like you're not just like seated out of ever being able to win, right? And so like unleveling that level playing field is unfortunate, right? It is a cost to doing them. I'm hoping that the benefits of, will be stuff like, hey, if I am a really good player and I'm sitting on a secret deck, I might actually, instead of saving it for Continentals, I might take it out for the Mega City Championships so that I can get a buy, because that's going to be as good as having a secret deck. Um, and then the other thing is, I do actually think it will increase the travel that people are willing to do for Netrunner events, because and in both directions. Like, people will travel further to try and win a buy, and then once they have a buy, they will travel further, like to go and use their buy. Um, so, Augustus, to be fair, elo seeding is just a surprisingly important thing, even though it never gets you free points. Yeah, and to be honest, like I don't know I don't know open chess tournament structures intimately. My understanding is, like, you kind of get seeded with people near you in your elo, and then you just do kind of regular Swiss ish from there. With you hold the players' elos kind of as a tiebreaker for pairing within the pool. Um, I'm actually Wenjang asking, oh, actual curiosity question for a first round buy implementation. I imagine there's going to be some sort of official registry. If so, what's your thought on having that registry absorb what Beanstalk's attempting to do? So here, the way that buys have been done historically is there's just a physical paper card that you're going to get with that the TO is going to get with their district championship, like, prize pack, and they sign it with their name, date the tournament was won, and then hand it to the player. And then that player goes to the TO at the, like, I win a district championship. I get the TO of the event to sign it for me, and then I can go to a Mega City Championship and then hand the TO there the buy card, and that's like the register. And then they hold onto the buy card and destroy it after the event so that I don't get to use it twice. Excuse me. Oh boy. I'm talking myself to death here. That is by default what we will probably do. Now, that said, Always Be Running is another great way for us to track this, and potentially having a website or a registry where you say, I won this event, here are the lists I used to win the event, might be something that we decide we want to do. I think, like, in my ideal world, in my ideal world, you register for an event, and your list is just published at the end of the event to a registry. For all these district, Mega City, Continental, and World Championships. But when I say that's my ideal world, I'm not talking about that is OP's ideal world. That is Jeff's ideal world. And as with all good things, just because I want it, it does not happen, because I have smarter people than me talking us through the ups and downs, let alone all the implementation hurdles to doing something like that system. So don't anticipate that. That's just like my ideal world. You register for an event, you submit your deck list. After the event, your deck list is published. And then we can track who's won events and who has buys and things like that. But there's no plans for that at the moment. Like, literally no plans. This is just me, running my mouth. So thanks, Josh. That means a lot coming from you. Let's see. Second part of your question. Absorb what Beanstalk's attempting to do. So I'm going to say I think there is very little interest in NSGOP in officializing Beanstalk or something like it. The exception might be something with the accelerated meta tests and making those a thing we put some seasonality to, or some kind of like, hey, you attended 5 AMTs, here's an extra prize at the end of the year. But I think there's been good faith criticism of the way that Beanstalk works, um, that have made it something that NSG is not prioritizing. And I also do think that even though I enjoy the Beanstalk a lot, and it's pretty motivating for me, even though my rating is going to be absolutely atrocious this year, because I did okay at NANPC Boston, I did terribly at Philly, probably not going to do well in the other events this year. I think I'm going to 2 more events this year. I also need to organize a local CO. Actually, I think I need to organize 2 local. No, I think only 1 local CO. And I probably need to buy some GNKs and stuff to run locally. Um, I find Beans personally motivating, but not everyone does. And having people in a ladder system changes how people are going to approach Netrunner. And it's not clear to me that having that be a central part of the Netrunner tournament scene is good for the existing community in Netrunner. Lucille, I was also a little bit surprised at how strongly some members of the community reacted to the Beanstalk. I think there's elements that I am sympathetic to in their point of view, and I do think this I do think there's a variety of different reasons to not like it that are very good. And I think also the ladderification of all hobbies has downsides. Now, I actually think Beanstalk is implemented fairly well to tamper some of that down. I think Cody did a pretty good job on a bunch of problems with it. But it's not something I expect NSG to be picking up anytime in the near future. Um, so, um, so yeah. Um, this is going to be a lot of work, but also the OP team has been crushing it. I think it's likely that sometime towards the end of the year, we'll be putting out a call for a couple more people in OP, um, and especially to help with the production of a kit, um, and that will be stuff like helping us commission art, track project timelines, get stuff to our manufacturer, get stuff to the distribution team. Um, we have a good crew of people for that, but I don't want people to get burned out, and so I'll be looking for a couple more people that are interested in those parts of production. Um, but um, but yeah, that's keep an eye out for that. And actually, I should shout out there was a recruitment article that went up just the other day. If you want to help out in other ways, so web stuff, please come help with web stuff. We all know that the site needs some improvement. Content editing is actually a huge deal. Cobra Bubbles does so much editing for NSG. He absolutely is crushing it. All of the articles written by me, as you can probably tell, are written by someone who writes much better than me. So convention coordinator, there's been a lot of people that want to help with conventions. EDI is recruiting for a bunch of people. It's a really it is, I think, one of the most interesting jobs you can have in NSG, where you think about the game in some very unique ways that have a lot of shape on the game. And then there's some game dev stuff. So if you want to help out, actually make cards. My personal bias as someone who works with developers as a playtester is that developers have some of the most direct hands on shaping Netrunner cards. And so if that's something that sounds exciting and you have some game dev experience and some talking about Netrunner in an intelligent way, I think it's a fantastic role to apply for. The startup stuff is also happening. The startup curation team lead is looking for people. The startup curator is looking to like form a small team. And then startup panel volunteers is also a thing. And so please, like, if this is something like, the time commitment is often going to be what you can do. Like, I have people in OP that help out like just a few hours a month. Like, we're talking like 3 to 4 hours a month, and that's fantastic. They are do extremely invaluable stuff. And then I have people that like I have to tell like stop, please, to, like, take an afternoon off. Like, do Netrunner stuff with the time that you feel like you can give. And it's okay to come in and say, I think I can do this. And then you get in and discover, actually, I have less time than I thought. Or, even better, sometimes I have more time than I thought. I really enjoy working on Netrunner. It is, it is a huge source of meaning in my life. And I don't know, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of getting to help run organized play. And genuinely, I think most of the good decisions in organized play are not me. So I want to make sure that people give credit. Like, it's, it's been a core team in OP that does a lot of the thinking and talking. And it's been such a great experience. And I feel like a lot of the other teams are run quite, really well. And so I would encourage you, if it's something you're interested in, to check out. Man, other news. Run together. I guess I'm doing Andre's job because he took the day off like a slacker. Ignore the fact that this is the first stream I've done in a month. Run together. Doing another set of stuff. Run together summer pack. 20 play sets of alt arts. You can order these. You can use them as prizes. You can use them for yourself. And the funds do go to help people at Worlds. I don't think we're announcing cash values, but we're expecting people. I'm expecting, if these sell as well as I expect they will, that we'll be looking for more people to apply to run together. If you're like, oh man, I don't know about going to Worlds, please apply for Run Together. If you just want some cool cards and want to support other people going to Worlds, this is a great way to do it. But yeah, I don't know. Lots of great news here. Oh yeah, this is actually, man, another important piece of news. We had been very ambiguous about when kits needed to be run, so we're trying to be very clear. Casual tournament kits. The 2023 H2 kit must be run by the end of October, and then the 24 kits end of March and end of October next year. So, I gave a couple of people a little bit of a hard time early in the year because we had a policy at the time. It became pretty clear through those conversations that our policy was not actually clear to external people. So hopefully this will help people, make some plans around that. I'm really hoping we can hear from the ban list team if and when there's going to be a ban list so that people can plan some casual events. And yeah. Yeah, so people, I would encourage you to apply to Run Together. I would encourage you to go to Worlds if you can. And yeah. Lucille, to answer your question quickly, and I know this is not the clarification you want, to clarify when you can start using leftover prizes from an old kit and a new one. Basically, as soon as if you use a kit and then you have leftover prizes, they are yours to do with, as long as you distributed all of the prizes in the kit as follow the guidelines. Any remaining are yours to do as a TO with what you want. That's not stated explicitly, I think, and it's a good note for us to think about. But that's sort of the way it is. Okay. I'm trying to decide if I feel like playing some Netrunner or if I kind of want to call it here at a bit of a short stream, and then plan to play some actual Netrunner on Tuesday. So maybe I'll let, if anyone has questions they want to ask about NSG, OP, the meta, why I did so badly. I don't know. I'll answer a couple questions, but I think I'm gonna call it a night after this, and I'll be back on Tuesday to do some more actual play of Netrunner. So. Why did I do so badly? Because I played bad decks that I hadn't practiced. But meet her. I know you spent the first half of the stream on why World Tree should be banned, but how do you feel about the meta as closing remarks? All right, I'm gonna come right back to that question. Actually, Chronos Protocol is just a quick. We actually say it here. I thought we said it here. Hold on. Did we not put this? Did that miss the article? Wait, let's just see. Okay. District Championship applications will be available in October. Applications for Mega Cities will be in January. And then Continentals will open in February. This one we're talking about if we want to push that forward a little bit, make it more like January. But for now, we're going to leave it at February. So that's when tournament applications will open up, Kronos. Honestly, I would have... Maybe if we can find a way to get dates into this next year without making it too visually busy, that might be a nice thing to do for both like an application window and then an event window. Okay, how do I feel about this meta? This is an odd meta. I don't know if this is a meta I love, but it is not nearly as bad as I thought it was. It is a much, much more interesting meta than I thought it was back in when the set dropped. I was pretty excited. I was pretty much expecting to just see Turbine Hosh run the meta. And it's cool that that's not the meta we've ended up in. I don't think I like the World Tree. I don't love what the World Tree RE deck is doing to the meta. I think it's access to all the pieces it needs, and just honestly the amount of raw value that World Tree actually ends up producing is just a little bit over the curve. And it pushes Corps to feel very luck-based. And, you know, this meta is making me question a lot about what the role of luck is supposed to be in Netrunner. And how both sides are supposed to be mitigating luck. I don't think I have a conclusion on that yet. Because clearly luck and low percentage accesses are a very, fundamental part of Netrunner is you could always feel like you have an out. Like, you always have a 5% line or something like that. And that can be really cool. But the runner always feels like they have that 5% line. And it kind of feels like, to me, Corp win rates are more of a funnel, where the more turns the game goes, for most Corps, their win rate is going down turn after turn after turn. And I think there's a style of Corp where that's actually the way they want to play, and that can be cool. But you want some Corps that have comeback potential to them. And I feel like right now, I don't love this meta because I feel like if I'm playing a Corp and I don't get ahead early, I'm never going to have a window to get ahead. And that's a little bit odd. It is a weird structural thing to identify, and I think it is a very much personal feeling thing based on the decks that I have been playing, which are very snowbally. And so it's difficult for me to disentangle my personal perceptions of that are colored by heavily my experience versus the ones that are true to the meta. And I also don't know that this is a problem that we can solve with the current card pool, and that trying to solve this for future card pools is also non-trivial. There is like a small part of me. Oh man, this is a whole extra topic I forgot to talk about. Give me a second. Man, this is going to be a huge tangent for a second. But I think this payoff will be worth it. Give me a second. So I've been running, and I had a bunch of people helping me with what I've been calling the world's GOAT like championship series. And exactly what I'm going to do with this, it's a little bit unclear right now. Oh, I'm getting the wrong stuff. Where are we? Oh, I'm at the wrong site. That's why my password finder is not finding me the right stuff. Okay. Okay. So what the idea of this was, and let me go in, I think I've talked about this in the past, right? And the event, at least for now, is done. I think the content I want to make on this is going to look a little different than I thought it was going to. So we're gonna see, but and it may still happen the way I want it to. We'll find out. Which is, so the idea was that I would take 2 representative decks from Worlds each year. Generally, the top decks from that year's Worlds, and the second place decks, or sometimes a lower than second place deck if I thought it added some variety. And the idea was that people were gonna play these cross-era decks against each other. And something that I started noticing was these runners are honestly, like, all of these runners have serviceable mashups against most of the field. But like Corpse, it was like here before they started winning games consistently. Maybe here, right? Like 2016 and earlier decks. Like, I think of 2016 as a very high power year for Corpse, right? We have this Snakebite CTM that basically is the meta. The 2016 Worlds was one Corp, effectively. It was this style of CTM. And then just like runners that were trying to beat this Corp, right? And something that we started seeing was that you did not have to be a runner that was particularly teched for this list. Even though this has like one of the like most warping and defining, like this was a Worlds where like it was a one deck meta, right? But when you actually go and compare this across time, the deck is not actually that strong. And part of me is wondering if those, like, we have just learned more theory about running than was known at the time, and that, like, to some extent we've changed how Netrunner works because we now can run better than we used to be able to. And so I like to go back to the point of, I don't know what a Corp comeback looks like. In old school decks like Food Coats, your comeback was you're going to get beat up in the early game. You're going to get hammered in the early game. But you have this late game thing of Ash Caprice. And so the mid game becomes about the runner having to manage that Ash Caprice. Um, and um, that gave the Corp, even if they were behind, it gave them room to win, but it didn't do so in a way where they actually they had they had this window that Ash Caprice created, but they didn't just get to say, "Oh, on infinite money, I will win the game consistently," um, which is a very I don't know. I wonder if it was something that, oh, if we went back with modern theory of playing Netrunner, if we would go like if our runner decks look really different. Because one thing I did was I played this 2014 Worlds winning Andy. Actually, this was not the one I played. Sorry. I played a couple games of this 2013 Andy Sucker deck. And this deck has some oddities. It has some things I would call errors. But this deck destroys actually quite a few corps. And it does so for a couple reasons. One, Yogg is a card. If you're new and don't know Yogg that well, this is Buzzsaw's daddy, and I mean that in the this card was so good. Breaking for 0 is the difference between breaking for 0 and breaking for 1 is just enormous. And just changes what code gates are allowed to be, right? And I think quietly Desperado is one of the most impactful old school Netrunner cards. Turning the basic run action into a run and gaining a credit ends up being this massive tempo shot for the runner. And so when I play this Andromeda deck, I just basically treated the hostages, the Procos, the Katie Jones as completely dead cards. And you just treat some of your cards as dead, you treat Crypsis as dead, and then you just run people down. And was my competition where I got to run them down the strongest? No, because the HP Fast Advance deck from the same event is effectively unplayable. This list just doesn't work in higher power level formats. This is a 2013 small card pool, good in that event, not good in the scope of Netrunner power stuff. Whereas this runner deck, I think genuinely, I think you could take this Andromeda deck and do pretty reasonably at an event today. And not, even if you warn people about Siphon, even if they're allowed to make small adjustments for Siphon being in the deck, this deck is just, I think, actually hits pretty hard, even though it's running 2x easy marks. I think the deck is somewhat of a real deck. And so there's a part of me that worries that we haven't actually seen the type of Corp card that I want to see, and I don't know how you print that type of card I want to see. I want kind of a mid-game recovery tool for the Corp, but the problem is anytime you print a recovery tool, well, if it's strong enough to get you back in the game when you're already winning, it's probably actually pushing you to a win. And so it's I don't know how you get around that, right? Odd Radish commenting, Skunk Void seems such a big step in lockout potential compared to Caprice Ash. And sorry, I'm going to come back to the Caprice Ash because Augustus is basically echoing me, and I think it says it very well. I'm not sure if it's the same phenomenon, but current Oshiko list is a good example of this. Reg host decks don't have many new cards, yet their matchup in the Corps have felt much, much more crushing because of streamlining of running practices. Yeah, I think there's been a turnover, and like some of this is just that these decks, like these NSG era decks, like actually just have some bonkers wildly strong cards relative to what was printed in FFG. Like it's this weird thing where like, oh well, we haven't printed Temujin, so we haven't committed any sins. But I think in practice, NSG is just like the average power level, the average power level of a card that you include in an NSG era runner deck is higher than the average power level of a card in FFG era deck. FFG cards had higher highs and lower lows, I think, on average, than the NSG cards do. And that's not like a condemnation or a praise. It's just kind of where I'm kind of coming down on how this comes out. And so that has allowed runners to play in a, I'm going to call it greedier fashion. The style of play in 2013 and 2014 and 2015 was like, as the runner, like, I'm going to play Maker's Eyes because I need to steal agendas before the Corp can set up. I need to exploit the early game. And the way, and I don't know if this is card pool or player knowledge, we've shifted more and more and more year over year into the runner understanding that they're the control deck. And that if they can control when the Corp is able to score, that's actually more valuable than stealing the agendas in a lot of cases. And so I don't know, is this an evolution that was enabled because of NSG cards? Or is this a thing that is a learned truth about the game that no one knew about until we played this game for a decade? I don't know. And I don't, I think some smarter people can help me, can answer that question. Meteor, why are there 8 breakers? I don't know. We can go through them very quickly and talk about what the role of each of them was. So, yeah, I know it's anti-shaper sentiment, but that's, I contain multitudes, right? Corroder, you wanted your barrier breaker out quickly. Fairy is a temporary killer. It is a very, very good killer. So good that NSG reprinted it. And actually, the alter they did for the 2019 Fairy, like, they did Fairy, they did Mimic, and they did Deus Ex. Those 3 arts, genuinely some of my favorite alt art pieces. But Fairy was a very good card, but you needed an actual killer to back it up. But Fem was not your actual killer. Fem was a piece of tech. There was some very impactful on encounter effects, and so Fem let you bypass them. Mimic also has some weaknesses, but was the de facto killer in the format, because you backed it up with what was effectively Leech, and then you had Yogg. Now, do you need Crypsis and Fem and Mimic and Fairy? Probably not all of the above, but I would have to know. I don't know which of these are supposed to be cut, and I haven't tried to build the 2013 card pool. I think if we're playing with Dirty Laundries, we should be playing daily casts. That's like the standout thing that's missing from this list, in my perspective, before I make any other optimizations. Okay, Odd Radish. So we're going to talk about Caprice. I don't think that Skunk Void is more powerful than Caprice Ash. But I think some of that is also some weird ruling differences that are not, I think, how they would work now. So let's go and look at Caprice Nisei. So Caprice says whenever the runner passes all of the ice protect the server, the runner secretly spends 0, 1, or 2, reveals spent credits if you and the runner spend a different number of credits and the run. Cool. This is a side game, so I actually think this costs less for the Corp than firing an Anoetic Void does. Now, and similarly, like Ash, let's just go and get Ash. Just for people that don't know this, I know you do, but Ash was whenever there's a successful run on the server, trace 4, its successful runner cannot access cards other than Ash. And so to access an agenda in a Caprice Ash server as the runner, you need to first win a side game. If you lose the side game, that's it, kaput. If you win the side game, you then have to have more money than the Corp can afford to boost into a Trace 4 that they res for 2. So they're going +2 on the Ash res. If you have both of those, if you can win the 1 and 3 and then win the money war, you win. I think that in practice to me is pretty close to what Skunk Void does. But Skunk Void makes you throw out 2 cards. It also makes the runner pay those 5 credits first before the run gets ended. So there's a good argument for the power being stronger there. The other thing that is kind of quietly strong about Caprice, and this wasn't true in HB, but this was true in Replicating Perfection, is that you could play a side game and then as the Corp, you could use a Nisei Mark II counter to just end the run. So the runner actually had to win 2 side games and beat the Ash Trace before they could have a chance to access the agenda. So it's a different power. I'm not sure. Like, it's difficult for me to say that they are stronger. Like, to me, the test for is Anoetic Void's Managarm stronger is like, okay, let's swap them and see how it goes. And like, you swap them and then you like import Caprice Ash into the modern card pool and then allow the PD player to make adjustments to what they want to do. And you import Anoetic Void Managarm into the 2013 era HB, allow them to adjust their deck lists and start playing. And then your comparison is the 2013 Skunk Void, 2013 Ash Caprice, maybe it's 2014. I'm losing time. And then you do the same thing with the modern deck lists. So yeah, that's my sense. I think that Skunk Void and Ash Caprice are pretty close in power level, so I don't know a strong difference between them. But then Autodesk, you also asked another interesting question, which is what decks do I think are the strongest here? So my hunch going into this, you could Nisei Mark II after Caprice, but not after the Ash. That's correct. Yeah. Once the run was successful, there was no paid ability triggers, but Caprice fired before the last paid ability window. Okay. So my guesses on what the strongest decks were going to be was something like Stinson Reverse CI. I think this 2017 deck is absolutely cracked. I thought the Haleys had a chance of being the strongest deck. I also thought that Hate Bear had a very strong claim to being the strongest runner deck of all time. So my hunch was it was like the decks sort of in this range that I thought would be the strongest. By after 2017, FFG was like, oh wait, we need to ban some of our broken cards rather than just trying and like nibble around their edges. So I felt like the power level of Netrunner kind of peaked in about 2017 and then went down. And like, I have some unabashed love for Hate Bear. I was playing in the Bay Area. I was not as nearly as good as these players at the time. But this deck to me, I was like, oh, this deck is cracked. Now, I think the deck is still quite good. I've learned some of its, like, June and that SF crew, I think actually were really, really good at meta reads and taking orthogonal solutions to the expected meta and then hyper tuning their matchups for that specific meta. And so Hate Bear has some weaknesses that, like, if you're trying to build Hate Bear to beat this field, I think you could tune it with cards of its era and improve his matchup against the field without making dramatic changes. Um, but what actually happened in this event was this. 2018, 2021, 2022, 2021, 2019, 2022, 2014, and 2017 make up the top 8. So the list is heavily dominated by NSG era stuff. And then when we break it down a bit more, boat. I forget, this is like Rizeki Adam, and I forget what the 2019 Adam was, but like you start seeing some powerful stuff. MT is one of the highest winning Corps, which is kind of like, is interesting. And it's one of the things where I'm like, I have some lessons I learned from running this about how I would run this differently and how I might try and run this differently in the future. But there was like player skill mattered way more than I was expecting it to in this pool. I sort of expected that like I could take some players that I knew were disparate in skill levels, but then say, okay, well, one of you is playing a 2019 deck and one of you is playing a 2013 deck. That matchup will only ever go 2019 favored. And then it's like, oh, actually, there's a ton of skill in Netrunner. And so even if you have the worst deck, there's rooms for you to outplay your opponents. And so part of what I wanted to, like, a way I might take this project, and by I might take this project, I mean, I've thought about taking this project, but almost certainly never will, is making this a league kind of setup where you queue up, you get matched against someone, and then I hand you and your opponent a deck, and I track an MMR rating for both you and your deck, and then recalculate those after every matchup. Yeah, 2015 did very badly. 2015 came in last, or effectively last, and pretty low as well. Like, I know we all like say, oh, DLR was broken. Most corps are faster than DLR is. It's just, it turns out in practice, DLR was good because of the speed of corps at the time, and all modern corps are just faster than DLR. Some of that is probably also some player unfamiliarity with DLR, but the deck is just not as strong as we remember it being. The deck was kind of broken at the time, but I think there's also a thing where like Corpse evolved a bit. But yeah, I would not be shocked, like, no offense to Toron, I would not be shocked if the true power level of 2015 Val is higher than this. But yeah. But yeah, so it's, Meteor was saying, oh, endurance is broken. Obviously, those are too strong. I actually don't know that that was not my prior coming into this, and no one I talked to was like, well, obviously the endurance decks are the best decks. And I think there's some good reasons for that. Not every Corp meta has been about ice. Now, in practice, it turns out that APOC and Freedom are really good at leveraging endurance into cutting out alternate win conditions. And that's kind of why they ended up doing so well. I think it's not because, yes, they do well in part because endurance is absolutely busted. But the other part is that APOC Lat and Endurance Freedom, also known as Liberté, Egalité, Humidité, are just really, they're well-tuned decks that try and disrupt the only other way they could lose. Which, that's it, in that context, yeah, obviously they are some of the strongest decks of all time. But that wasn't my prior going into this. Part of me is also like, hey, some of this data is probably a little biased by just people being more comfortable playing decks from this era where decks have played more similarly. But 1 second while I try and go and delete a bot. Awesome. And then we will report. I find it so funny that they're like, "Oh, tell us what you're doing," and I'm like, "Well, read the guy's message." Okay. What you said about average running skill practice being better is really interesting. Do you think we've hit a soft cap on both runner or corp skill? I don't know. I genuinely don't know the answer to that. I would suggest that the evidence is probably no. I don't think we've figured out the game yet. I think we're just better than we've evolved more than I think maybe we thought we did, and this exercise is an interesting way to do that. The other lesson I've taken from this is that having these paired up matchups is very, very weird, because this was a 4-round event, and you'll see like I did an ID between the top two because I was like, I'm not going to make you two they were both going to EMEA, and it's like I don't want to make them play that out. But a lot of these decks end up being pretty lopsided. Like in 2014, Eric gets 9 out of a possible 12 points with Andromeda, but then only a single win off of Replicating Perfection. And then, there's a couple other cases like that. Like, I mean, Eric did it again with 2014, so maybe Eric's just not very good at Corp, but yeah. But Koga is also doing this, like 2019. This is one of those ones where I'm like, Koga, we can do better than this. Though I do, like, it's funny, like, I do actually think I improved Pencil's list post-Worlds. So, yeah. But, like, yeah, Meteor, you're hitting part of it, is that the NSG, like, environment is functionally different from NSG into how ice breaking works. And that is like such a fundamental system to the game that like Boomerang, Endurance, and Botulus, like all 3 of those cards had changed what was asked of the runner. I do think Augustus, and actually Augustus, I will say, like, I think we've hit a soft cap on Corp skill. I think we're gonna start to hit the point where Corps just have to start actually playing gambling games rather than engine efficiency games. And that's like the next level of Corp evolution of like you start just saying, I need to be able to present threats that can be read as different things and have different expected outcomes for the runner. But that feels like a small edge you're getting compared to like, I do think we have a long way to go still on like runner optimization. But then also, this is an evolving card game, and so the card pool will change. And that's going, like, the card pool changing also warps this. And so, like, the story I had been telling myself was, like, oh, Netrunner power peaked somewhere around here. It had another climb here, and then, like, 2023 was probably a bit of a power decline from Endurance. It's probably a bit of a power decline from 2021. Probably a bit of a power decline from 2020. The data kind of bears that out, but I don't think I trust this data yet. And like, I float the idea of like an MMR league. Maybe instead of having people play random decks, I just say, play the decks you like. Here's the deck. I would not probably put 22 decks in the league. It's just a little bit too many. Um, but like, could Andy Sucker and Noise and Book of Kate, DLR Vat, like, of these runner lists, like, most of them I actually probably would put in the league. But, like, these decks just don't have a realistic way to win. They just, like, it's one of those things where, like, this is the thing I've also observed with Classiques, where they're just runner favored because I think we've learned how to run better. Um, and I wonder how much, like, there's the interest, like, I'm starting to understand some of the format interest that you see in stuff like Magic the Gathering and like Yu-Gi-Oh, where they're like, we're going to go back to when the card pool was this big and try and re-explore it with the new knowledge we have about how the game functions. Um, and like, it's definitely an interesting idea. I think it's not what I'm going to do immediately. I am hoping to do a sort of in-person top 8 at the Neon Static Studio at some point. But I may instead post this as a project of oh yeah, so Lucille, my actual hack for this was, I was going to use, there are papers on how you can do MMR ELO systems, which are in general a generalization of Glico from one person to a multi-team things, and then instead having it, I was just going to treat the deck and the player as both players that have independent MMRs, and your win rate is effectively the player's MMR plus the deck's MMR minus the opponent's MMR minus the opponent's deck MMR. And then you can do, like, there's some Bayesian equations that you use to do updated ratings on everything. Um, so I don't know. That's like the other way to look at that. Anyway, I think so. Yeah. Overall point, Corps feel like they are in a weird space where the mix of card pool and increased runner understanding force Corps to play in very specific ways that are not always ones that I find super rewarding. And I think it needs like a card pool fix, and that's a very difficult thing to do. I don't. So Onrad is saying, do you think the Corp card pool just has less room for skill expression than runners? I don't think that's true. I think to some extent the issue for Corpse is runners are designed to go through most or their entire deck in the average game. Corpse have if they go through their entire deck in the average game, their win rate's actually pretty low because they can't score all those agendas fast enough. There are exceptions. PD is one of them. The Facet Obelisks kind of are because they end up forfeiting points to archers, so they like cycle points out of the game. But I think this like in somewhat odd, like, I don't know if it's structural or if it's a function of the specific card pool we're in, that make Corpse feel a little more skill capped right now, in how expressive they can be with skill. I think there's also an open question of what is skill supposed to mean. Like, there's many different skills, and like, yeah, there is a skill in Netrunner as the Corp of being able to play out bad hands and stuff like that. But anyway, I think that's probably where I should stop for tonight. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I will see y'all on Tuesday, barring a meteor strike, hopefully. Um, and I'll actually play some Netrunner then. Um, and yeah, if playing in a throwback cross era stream is interesting to you, uh, don't hesitate to give me a shout to do something. Maybe what I should do is take one of the GLC shape channels and say, hey, I'm going to run this as an event and see what people's interest is. And yeah, so thanks everyone for tuning in. It's great to see so many of y'all coming back. Apologies that my streams have been so inconsistent. Hopefully moving to Tuesday will let me get them consistent, at least up to Worlds. Post Worlds, who knows. But yeah, thanks everyone, and I'll see you on Tuesday.